Thank you, Tash. Lovely to be here. Can you all, oh God, I can hear myself, so you must be able to, hopefully. Well, thank you everybody for coming along to this one. As Tash says, this is all to do with how we as TA professionals can have more impact in the boardroom, how we can put TA on the front foot in conversations that historically or traditionally maybe it isn't, and how we can really make TA seen as a strategic driver of a business and not just a reactive tactical function. A tiny little bit about me. So like many people, I fell into recruitment after uni many years ago, cut my teeth in agency before moving in-house and before moving into consulting. And so what we do as a business and what I do personally is an awful lot around helping TA leaders write strategies that are going to engage with the board. And do that really in a couple of different ways. One is where we might do a full-time but short-term interim gig with people. So this time last year, I was doing a TA leader role with Ocado, all about tackling how they hire more techies, more software engineers into their business. The other way is where we do much shorter, sharper diagnostics, where we'll do an end-to-end strategic review of TA of what's working and what's not working, and make our recommendations for change. And all of that really links closely with Caraffi's purpose as a business. We talk an awful lot about elevating people leaders, and what we mean by that is we want people to develop their careers and not necessarily see the head of TA role as the final destination, but actually our mission is all about TA director to CPO to CEO. And I'm going to talk a little bit today about that journey, some of the challenges in that, and more importantly, what we can do about it. I'm sure many of you are sitting there thinking, well, TA director to CPO to CEO sounds great, but that's a pretty tough path to consider. And actually, the truth of that is, it hasn't happened yet. So in the Fortune 500 or the FTSE 250, no CEO has been appointed from the CPO seat. And to us as an organization, that's just not acceptable. It should be that we're able to be on the front foot. We're actually in a brilliant position as TA leaders to use the kind of metrics that we can to demonstrate the impact of what we do at a board table. So that's what this session's all going to be about. And obviously we'll do some questions at the end. So from all of the work that we've done, I say an awful lot of that tends to be with TA directors. We're often engaged by their bosses, which tends to be the head of talent or the CPO, and their boss clearly being the CEO. A lot of what we hear is that ask any chief exec what actually keeps them up at night. There's only three things there. First is, have I got enough customers? And are they buying the right products? Have I got enough customers, spending enough money on the right things? Are they going to return to us? Are they going to continue to fuel our revenue? Have I got enough cash in the business would be the second thing. Have I got enough money to finance the initiatives that I want to do, whether that be acquisition, whether that be transformation programs, or whether that's just, can I keep enough cash flowing through our business to sustain our operations? The third is, do I have the right people in the right jobs doing the right stuff? This is our pillar, clearly, right? That's where we are. So on the left there, first one, that tends to be led by the chief marketing officer or the chief product officer. Middle column clearly run by the chief finance officer, and then we've got CPO over here. But of those three pillars, only one of those is never considered the natural successor to the chief exec. And that is our purpose in life, is to change that dialogue, not by being a victim of it, but by taking control of it and putting people like ourselves on the front foot in that. If you choose or are invited to or even instructed to read analyst reports or companies' annual reports, you'll see an awful lot in there where if you just start with the chairman's summary or the chief exec summary, you'll see an awful lot of metrics about everything apart from people. But people are our most important asset. This is a well-trodden truth, okay? We don't generate data. However, there is an awful lot of data out there, whether you read McKinsey, whether you read PwC, whether you read Gartner, whoever it might be, that talks about what a chief exec actually worries about. And test it in your own businesses. If you get the opportunity to ask, what keeps your chief exec up at night? You will find that very quickly, if not the first thing that they say, is do I have the right people in the right jobs, doing the right stuff for today, but also for the future? Typically, bringing this to talent acquisition in our roles, there are probably between 10 and 20% of the roles in any of your organizations which do two things. One, they're the people that everybody shouts about if they go wrong. And two, they are the roles that are going to impact the future. They're the ones that might execute the change that's going to come tomorrow. They might be the ones that drive the revenue into the business. So you know what your high-profile roles are and the ones that need to be got right. So whoever you read, there is no doubt that this is absolutely high on the agenda, and yet we've still got that issue that we come back to, that the CPO is not considered the natural successor to that chief exec job. So there's some good news in here, which is that there is a blueprint for how to deliver this. If you wind back probably 20, 25 years ago, there were very few marketing directors or CMOs who were the successor to the chief exec. The reason for that was that they would do all of the beautiful graphics, the designing, adverts on TV, and all the rest of it, but they didn't have the ability to measure all of that. But start at the beginning. First things first, with customers. Who are we as an organization? What do we stand for? What do we want to deliver? What is our DNA? That is research-led, that's persona-led, and only at that point do you then translate that into a customer brand and journey. So then create the products, and then crucially, how do I measure the success of my function? So that's where CMOs, over time, managed to turn that on its head. Where they used to report to salespeople, it changed everything about how they can report that. So go back to those annual reports that I spoke about. On those chairman summaries, the chief exec summaries, that will say, this is our average customer value, this is our average basket value, this is the average customer lifetime value, this is the cost of customer acquisition or customer retention, littered with metrics there. The same blueprint is true in finance. You will have investors in a business. They might be public shareholders if you work for a PLC. They might be internal shareholders if there's equity held within the business. But your CFO has to have that promise that he can make to investors that says, we are on this journey and this is how we're going to do it, in order to keep that investment there, keep people from taking their cash out of the business. And then again, back to those reports, you will see those statements littered with revenue to profit, all sorts of financial metrics will be in there. Then at the end of that, as I said before, but people are our most important asset. Not one metric will be associated to that phrase in that report. And this is where we're saying that as a collective, we don't do this well enough to articulate our value and how we impact on an organization. But if you look at the blueprint, as I mentioned earlier, if you went over here and replaced the word customer with colleague, you can actually write the same thing. And the same approaches would allow us to become that strategic driver and go from where CMOs were to where they are now. Roughly speaking, 40% of CEOs come from CFO seat, it's just under 30% come from the marketing director, and the rest tend to be made up of founders on that. So let's bring this back a little bit into TA and about getting on the front foot. There are three really key component parts that we need to do as TA leaders in order to be taken strategically, to be taken seriously. The first is your vision. And this is critical, that you have a vision for TA that absolutely aligns to your business vision, which will be articulated by your senior exec about what the business wants to be. Just as a kind of point of clarity or a little test for this, your vision should be no more than 10 seconds. Really crystal clear. Imagine the scenario where you bump into the chief exec in the canteen or the coffee shop or whatever it is, and they say, what do you do? You ought to be able to say in 10 seconds, this is what I'm going to achieve for the business. And you need to deliver that as if you absolutely 100% believe in it, which you should, by the way. But that's what that is. Then if that part of the conversation goes well, you might have them say, well, what does that mean? How are you going to do it? That's the strategy. You should be able to articulate that very succinctly and very memorably, which we'll come back to. But we see it all the time, and all of it, me included, and I'm sure we all have been guilty of this. We talk to a lot of TA directors in our work, and we'll say, well, have you got a strategy for TA? And to a person, they'll say, yeah, of course I do. Great. Tell me about that strategy. What is it? And then often people will then start talking a lot and go on and keep talking. This is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it. This is the difference that I think I'm making. These are the projects that we've got going on. And if you say, well, hang on, just pause, just send me your strategy, you'll actually find that about half of those people can't send you a document, and far, far less than that can send you a document on one page that says very clearly, here's where we are now, here's where we're going to get to, and here's what we need to do to deliver that. So that chief exec conversation in the coffee shop is about, what do you do? Okay, how are you going to do it? Should still be really succinct. The detail behind that, that's for your teams, that's for you to know. They might ask you one thing about that if they've seen a one-page strategy, and of course you better have the answer, but the strategy on a page, the succinct, memorable version, is what an exec is going to want to hear about. And then crucially, this is the bit I was talking about earlier about those 10 or 20% of roles. We've got to find a way, as TA professionals, of linking balance sheet altering metrics to what we do. So, a couple of examples. Sometimes salespeople is quite a straightforward one. What are the revenues that they're going to bring in if you hire those? Often it's tech. What impact is that going to make? What change is that going to be able to deliver? Could be transformation, as I said before. But find the way that you link data and insights to the bottom line, to the balance sheet, and start there. So, as I say, we do an awful lot of working with TA leaders to write strategies. This is a template. Clearly, it's not going to be for everybody. It's not going to be perfect. But it will give you a starting point as to things to think about. Critical bit to start with. I know I'm repeating myself, but very deliberately. Your vision for TA must absolutely link to the business's vision. It has to be relevant for TA, but it has to articulate how TA is going to enable the business to achieve the goals that it has set at the exec level. And then actually, there are 5 pillars to a strategy for TA. You may well all call them slightly different things. You might use them slightly differently. But actually, fundamentally, they'll fall within those buckets. First up, demand planning, one of my favorite and least favorite topics, if that makes any sense. Demand planning is one of those things where so many people say, oh, if only someone could give me a decent demand plan. Our business does demand plan terribly. But I would say to that, in the absence of good demand planning, then take hold of it, take control, don't be a victim to it. It's someone else's fault that doesn't exist. Because actually, you're in a seat that's got an awful lot of intelligence to produce something pretty decent on that. So how many people did we hire last year? What buckets of roles did those sit in? What geographies did those sit in? What acquisitions are we going to make next year? What countries might we open in? And what's that going to mean from a headcount point of view? And actually, if you were to produce a workforce plan based on all of the intelligence that you will have access to, and then show it to people, you'll be amazed how many people will then red pen that a little bit, and you'll get a slightly revised version, rather than if you gave them a blank sheet of paper in the first place and asked them to produce one. They're not going to do the homework. So take control of that one would be my urge there. Going back to the previous slides about EVP and employer brand, let's not forget, very, very separate things. Your EVP is that bit we spoke about, which is persona-led, it's research, it's who are we, what's our DNA, who works well in our business, who stays in our business, who performs in our business. And then we're into translating that into an inspiring and effective employer brand that needs to be on the right channels for our target audiences and, messaged in the right way and all of that. Are we creating brilliant experiences for both our candidates and our hiring managers as they come through attraction, selection, onboarding? All of those things go into consideration. Have we got the right tech and data to make that as seamless as possible, and then also to be able to articulate that, as we said before? And then lastly, much like the chief exec's headache, have I got the right people in the right jobs, doing the right stuff for today and for the future? One really key bit here that we put within this DNA piece is things like ED&I. People ask us about all the time. It's not a standalone pillar. It's in everything. It has to be woven through all of the different bits that you do. It's a golden thread, if you like, as is what is our purpose as a business and what are our values and behaviors. So who we are as a business should be clear from the language involved in all of these different bits and pieces. And then again, as we said, with the pillars and the blueprints around customers and around finance, how do I measure the success of my function? And how am I going to demonstrate that? You're going to want to have all of the classic recruitment metrics, but there is a trap here, and the trap is that we fall into keep your job metrics, if you like. How many recs have we got on? How busy are we? What's our cost per hire? Etc., etc., as opposed to who stays, who performs, who gets promoted, who delivers that value, who delivers that revenue, who enables that transformation place, and really, really value the people that come through that TA engine into the organization. And by thinking that way, you will think a little bit more naturally, we really matter. We're really important. You can do very, very simple maths that says if average attrition in the UK is 15% and we're going to grow by 10%, that's the amount of people that are going to be new in the business next year. And often people sit up and listen and go, blimey, that's a bigger number than I would have thought of. Maybe I should take this quite seriously. So think about those impact metrics, absolutely, absolutely critical. So this, to us, is your framework for a plan on a page. Back to that conversation that you had with the chief exec. What do you do and how are you going to do it? This is that version. And this is that version that goes from, is this something I want to listen to? Is this going to impact a board? Is this going to engage a board meeting? Or is it not? And that's me. Thank you.